everybody. Welcome to what I consider probably the weirdest of the Dr. Keith Darrow podcast episodes, because today I am not your host. I'm just somebody here who's going to be interviewed and asked questions by the lovely Dr. Dusty Jessen, who volunteered to do this. Thank you so much for offering this. So I guess I'm going to hand it over to you because it's officially your show now.
Ooh, how fun. Thank you. Well, I'm coming to you live from Dunder Mifflin today. So we
Awesome.
we're going to keep the office theme here. Yeah, I'm excited to interview you. You know, I received a LinkedIn message from Dr. Keith Darrow a couple of months ago asking me to be on his podcast. And I'll be honest that normally I don't look at LinkedIn messages because I get so many kind of spam messages, but his name looked familiar. So I opened it and I read it and was excited. I'll never pass up an opportunity to talk about oral rehab. So I got to be on his podcast, had a great time, realized he's a great guy, and I wanted to learn more about him. And so I figured, well, rather than searching the internet for information, it would be fun to learn it from him.
I'm really glad you didn't, because God knows what you would have found.
Well, I don't know about that, but I just figured that if I wanted to learn more, then maybe other people out there want to learn more about this Dr. Keith Darrow person. So I thought it'd be fun to do it as a podcast and flip the script a little bit here. So in my own research, I learned that you are a neuroscientist, a clinic owner, a speaker, a researcher, an author, a consultant, an audiologist, a philanthropist, and a podcast host. And I learned that you are the director and founder of the Hearing and Brain Centers of America, as well as the Excellence in Audiology network of offices throughout the country. So let's start from the beginning, because I feel a little overwhelmed and stressed out just reading that
Okay.
about you. And so I am really excited to hear how the heck you've achieved all of this, and more importantly, how you maintain your sanity through all of it. So I really do want to start from the beginning, like the way beginning. And I want you to tell me a little bit about high school Keith.
So speaking of researching online, I am forever grateful that I grew up in the late 80s and early 90s before the internet, because the things you might find out about me back then might have completely derailed my career. No, and in all seriousness, I still to this day firmly believe it, and my mother tells me it's the truth. I wasn't a bad kid. I was the class clown, right? I was the guy who was always getting in trouble. I was the kid who, the nuns in grammar school wanted to, smack my hand and my head, but thankfully they weren't allowed to do that anymore. And then came high school, and, when I look back now, I think what it really was is that I hadn't found my passion yet. I didn't really know what I was interested in. And given my middle child syndrome, I decided I was going to be the entertainer. And this actually got me kicked out of high school twice. And I forever look back. I tell my mother often, I hope my father knew it before he passed away about a decade ago, that I really am sorry for being quite a pain in the butt. I know I caused a lot of angst in my family just because I was bored and I guess looking to have a little fun. And so that was a pretty traumatic experience for all of us, even though I didn't understand it at the time. But everything changed. I'll still never forget it. I was outside in the backyard. I was vacuuming the pool. My dad came out to me and he said, "Listen, Keith," and we didn't have a great relationship. And so he was very short. He just said, "Keith, here's the deal. You're about to go off to college. I will support you in doing this financially." Even though he didn't go to college. So even though maybe he didn't completely understand it, he said, "I will support you. If you have any grades less than a B, you're out. That's it." And I just looked at him and I said, "Okay, that fair deal." And then I got to college and something strange happened, because I never thought about what my father told me. I just fell in love with my studies. I fell in love with going to class. I fell in love with, I remember to this day, the one or two college classes that I skipped. Like that's it, my entire college career, because it was a newfound love for me. And so that changed my life. It was not under duress or threat. It was just, wow, I found something that interested me and pushed me to be a better person.
And was it just the education that you loved, or was it the subjects that you loved so much?
Well, ironically, so because I had just come out of a pretty bad high school experience, I had this thought floating in my mind. What am I going to do? Right? Everybody asks that. You're going to go to college. What are you going to do with your life? And so instinctively, I knew I wanted to help people. And so I always had it in my mind that I wanted to be some form of a social worker, a psychotherapist. I wanted to sit, and perhaps it was my own experience in therapy when I was younger, especially dealing with all the family turmoil, that I wanted to give back. And so here's the ironic part. In my social work class, Intro to Social Work 101, great professor. I'm kind of drawing a blank on his name right now because it's been a while. I remember him saying, look, if you're here for social work, it's a great career. And I'm taking all these notes. And he says, but just so you know, you will have to go to graduate school and get a master's degree. And I'm not kidding, Dusty. I walked out. I remember calling my mother and basically having the conversation of, I can't do social work. And she said, why not? I said, I can't stand the thought of more education. Like I got through high school barely, and here I am in college. I think I'm going to do okay, but no, 4 years and that's it. Ironically, I went to college for over 12 years once I found what I really loved.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, how many damn years did you go to school? Because that's a lot of credentials after your name.
I did. I went for a while. I only stopped at 30 because I basically had to. It was time to get a real life, get a real job. So I transferred out of the school that I was in. I decided to head up to the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, where I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't going to do social work because that would mean extra school. And of course, I still to this day, it drives my wife crazy, but I do listen to my mother and I follow a lot of her advice. And she said, Keith, I just read an article about speech language pathology. And here's the deal. Because of your gender, because you're a male, you'll have a lot of luck getting a job in this field because it's like 98% female. And I read an article, US News World and Reports. It's a great career to have. Okay, Mom, I'll take a class. And that was it. It like instantly Intro to Communication Disorders with Dr. Mary Andrianopoulos, who I'm still friendly with. She came to my wedding. I've been to her house. My children know her. We just instantly hit it off. She attracted me to the field. And then came my first hearing science course, and that was it. It was love at first hair cell, I guess you could say. And I then ran with it. And the next thing you know, it was graduate school, which wasn't even like a thought in my head, like, okay, I got to do this. And then I continued in school until eventually, like I said, 12 years in, it was time to grow up.
Wow. That's awesome. So you graduated with your master's in audiology, and then did you practice audiology for a little bit before you went back to school?
I did not. And this is this is one of those stories that I actually, and I look back now and I think, wow, what was I thinking? I finished my master's and I essentially quit audiology. I decided probably in the middle of my second year, I loved audiology. Don't get me wrong. It's exactly what I wanted to do. And to me, it was the perfect mix, right? Because what is audiology? It's like part hearing healthcare, part social work. So I was still able to do the counseling. But as a student, and I'll never forget, it was AAA 1999 in Chicago was when I had finally made up my mind that I was going to quit because, frankly, when I left there, I felt like I needed a shower. I felt dirty. I felt like, what have I gotten myself into? I thought I was going into a career to help people. And here I am at booths where there's these signs like, buy 10 hearing aids and get a free cruise to the Caribbean. I was horrified, to say the least. And I just felt like this is not what I signed up for. At least I didn't know that's what I signed up for. And so I quit. I said, that's it. I'm not going to do this. I didn't do my CFI. I literally just walked away and said, but what did interest me was the brain. What interested me was everything I learned about the ear, noise trauma, different degrees of hearing loss, how to help patients. And so I said, you know what? I'll go into this career. And I chose neuroscience at that time.
And so for neuroscience, is that when you went to MIT?
Yes. And so I was looking around at different programs. I wanted to stay in the hearing realm. That really interested me, but I wanted to learn more about the brain. And I was flipping through, because there really wasn't the internet back then. I had a really thick book. I don't know if you remember the book or if you ever saw it. You could write to ASHA and you could request the book of all the graduate programs. And it was this big, thick book, and it had every program listed in it, all their information, their application deadlines. And as I was flipping through, I went to the PhD section, and I found that there was a PhD available in speech and hearing bioscience and technology at MIT and Harvard Medical School. And I said, that's it. That's where I'm going. I have to go there. Even though I didn't know much about it, I just said I would love to go to Boston. This is the place I need to be. It was either there or Northwestern. Those were the two places I knew I had to be at one of those. And ironically, I got rejected from the program. I applied, and they basically sent me a letter saying, Keith, very interesting. We love that you're interested in this. However, you don't really meet any of the credentials. This is not a program for audiologists or speech pathologists. This is a program for engineers, for biologists, for physicists, for geneticists, anybody but you, because you're missing X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I was missing what they consider to be like 6 courses that you've got to know this knowledge or you won't be successful. So I wasn't mad at them because they didn't want to see me, they didn't want to see me enter the program and then fail. So I didn't tell anybody other than my parents. I said, look, it says right here in the letter, I was pretty literal. It says, if you take these courses, get back to us and maybe we'll reconsider. I think they were just being nice. So I went and I took all of those courses. And here's the crazy part. I took this all in the summer of about 2000. I called Dr. Chris Brown, who was on the admissions committee at MIT and Harvard. It's a joint program. And I said, hey, Dr. Brown, do you remember me? Keith Darrow. I had went for an interview. I met him and he said, yeah, how can I help you? I said, remember that letter you sent had all those courses? I took them all and I did really well in them. So now what? What do I do? And he was completely flabbergasted, didn't think he'd actually ever hear from me. Like I said, I think he was just being nice in the letter. So we kind of hung up and I thought, oh, well, too bad. Maybe I'll apply again next year. This is about August 20th. On August 22nd, he called me 2 days later and said, Keith, there's a spot open in the program. Can you be here by the end of the week?
Wow.
My life was just completely thrown upside down, but in a good way. I moved to Boston and kind of the rest is history, if you want to use that expression.
Wow. That's cool. So how long were you in school that stint?
So I was in the program for 6 years. So that was, a mix of courses, and you pick your concentration. I picked neuroscience because that is what interested me. I was fascinated by the concept of noise exposure. I was fascinated by the concept that, the ear sends information to the brain. But what really fascinates me is how the brain sends information back to the ear. So that feedback system, that efferent system is what really intrigued me. I quickly introduced myself to Dr. Charles Liberman, who then became my thesis advisor, colleague, and I consider him a dear friend to this day. We still, communicate with each other often, even though he's still in the lab. I'm doing different things, but it's not a coincidence that my son is named Charlie. There's a lot of Charlies in the family too, but there's definitely some influence there by my thesis advisor who who then saw me through those 6 years. And I then I just never left, right? It's the kind of place at Massachusetts Eye and Ear at the Auditory Physiology Lab where if you stick around and keep doing great work, they'll keep you around. And so I finished in 6 years, but I spent another 6 years in the lab. I was kind of like lab hopping, going from different lab to different lab saying, hey, I just found this. Wouldn't it be neat to explore it this way based on that principal investigator's area of interest? Next thing you know, we started up a new project, got funding, published that work. And so finally, after about 12 years was when I decided, okay, I'm starting a family. I can't be spending days on end in the lab. And I did want to teach. And that's what brought me back to saying, okay, I would like to find a home at a university and begin to teach.
Okay. So then let's go to your family real quick. So you met your wife in that time period there
in the lab. Yes. So
okay.
I'll make the long story short. My wife's mother was the director of research at Massachusetts Eye and Ear. And so nothing happened without her knowing about it. She directed all the research. She submitted all the grants. And so her daughter, my wife, who was graduating college and needed a job, she was interning at the hospital. And she was interning in the lab. This lab houses probably the smartest auditory neuroscientists in the world. There's anywhere from 15 to 20 of them, all these different labs. And she was interning, managing all the labs. And basically, we met. We went out to get some candy one day. Then it was coffee. Then it was a few drinks. Then it was a wedding. Then it was 3 kids. And now we're here today. Just recently celebrated our 15th anniversary. 3, I think I'm biased, but pretty awesome children that are still pretty young. And so that's that story.
Awesome. And where do you live?
I actually live in central Massachusetts, so in a little town called Sterling, which keeps me close enough to Boston. I keep in contact with the lab. My university is Worcester State University. I've been there now for about 11 years. I've been tenured for about 7 years, and it's just a phenomenal program. It's exactly what I wanted, which is undergrads. When I was interviewed, the chair of the department said, well, if you come here for a job, what is your goal? What do you want to do while you're here? And she's a speech pathologist. I looked her straight in the face and I said, I want to convince as many students as possible not to go into speech pathology. And she looked at me and I said, because I want them to go into audiology. And, a big smile came over her face. And ever since then, we've 10x the number of students who have gone on to get audiology degrees, because we've just had a much stronger focus in helping undergraduates understand the importance of hearing healthcare.
Cool. That's awesome. So I read somewhere that you have written more than 50 white papers. So did that start during those 12 years that you were?
No. So I was very fortunate that during my time at Mass Eye and Ear, we published a number of papers. Probably, when it comes to science world, there's this sort of ranking system. We were very fortunate to publish a paper in Nature Neuroscience, which is one of these world-renowned papers. And in that, we looked at how the 2 ears balance each other out, how the brain can control what happens in the ears. So I probably was on anywhere from 10 to 15 different publications, probably more than half of which I was the first author. Others, the white papers you're referring to, that has been, in my older years, in my later years in hearing healthcare, I've come to sort of understand that health literacy is really important. And health literacy, I believe, is the reason why less than 20% of people with hearing loss do anything about it, because they don't know any better. And too many times I look in the mirror and I say, that's your fault, Keith. That's you and every audiologist and every hearing instrument specialist. That's our fault. We need to do more to increase education for the 42 million people who live with untreated hearing loss. And so that's when the creative pen came out, and I just started writing paper after paper after paper that's specifically geared at patients understanding why it's so important to treat hearing loss.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then, so clearly you love to write, and you now have how many books? 5 books published?
So yeah, we have, so I've been fortunate. I've myself have completed 2 books, both of which instantly became Amazon.com #1 new release. And again, you said I love to write. Ironically, I don't think I necessarily enjoy it. And I think because I was never that good at it, I don't have a great technical writing skill. And I think that comes through, but in a good way. Bear with me here. A lot of people have said to me, when I read your books, I can hear you. I can hear you coming through on the page. It's as if you're talking to me. And the funny thing is, high school, college, even my thesis advisor in my PhD program always said, Keith, you write as if you're speaking. And I said, yeah, that's who I am. And so that's not good for scientific writing. So I had to work on that a lot. And now I have found a venue where, with a little bit of help from an editor, I've been able to sort of take what's up here and be able to just write and write and write and write. And I've got people that will help me to clean it up, make sure it makes sense, that there's, decent grammar there. And so it came down to my marketing guru, Jared Brader, who is a brilliant mind, who said to me, Keith, you talk about the 42 million all the time. You keep saying how much you want to help more of the 42 million. You'll never be able to treat the 42 million. But if you can take what's in your head and write it down, I can help you turn that into a book, and we'll get it published and we'll see what happens. And the reason I bring up the #1 bestseller isn't to brag, it's to show how many people out there are looking for information about treating their hearing loss. I'm talking about unbiased, not information that comes from a manufacturer, not that comes from anybody who has a vetted interest other than an independent, unbiased scientist who has studied firsthand what happens to the ear and the brain. And so I think there's just a lot of people yearning for that information.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe writing as though you're talking makes it more approachable for those people, because they don't want to read technical jargon, so.
I tell people it's like, it might be 140 pages, but you can do it in like 2.5 hours. Not that people just have 2.5 hours, but that's just a couple of nights. And what has really been probably one of the greatest honors in terms of my occupation has been reading the notes from patients who come in. Not just the patients I see, but patients across the country who have read this book. I have some audiologists who I've never met, don't know, who have sent me a note saying, hey, look, I saw this patient today. They read your book, and because of it, they came into my practice to learn more and to start treatment today. So thank you for doing this. And that has really been, one of the greatest accomplishments has been seeing this book affect, the 100 to 200,000 people who have read it. It's been an honor to do it, which got me to, you mentioned 5-6 books. A number of people have approached me. We've done some co-authorship, but Stop Living in Isolation was my own first book. And then my most recent release, which is Preventing Decline. And as you know, over the last few years, I've really become obsessed with this concept of helping people prevent dementia. And so that's what this book is all about: preventing dementia, preventing decline through the medical treatment of hearing loss and tinnitus.
And is that book geared toward the patient or toward the professional?
I geared it towards everybody. Okay. But I wanted this book to be a little bit different. It's definitely for the patient to read. I've gotten a lot of great feedback about it. But in my mind, I think without even knowing it, because I definitely didn't do this intentionally, I was writing Now that I look back, I think I was writing in hopes of steering the profession in a certain direction, in hopes that not only would patients read it, but that hearing healthcare providers, right? There's 12,000 of us, and that doesn't even include the staff, the front office. So there's 20,000 of us strong who serve these patients every day. I've often joked that, if more people decided to treat their hearing loss, we'd all have lines. We would all have a wait for over a year to get an appointment. There should be more audiologists than there are baristas at Starbucks. Back to my point, I was trying to steer the profession in a certain direction so that we can all understand the value of cognitive health. We can understand the value in helping our patients with tinnitus, helping our patients remain passionately independent and confident, reduce their risk of dementia, help them understand stages of hearing loss. I'm not a big fan of the old antiquated, mild, moderate, severe system. It means nothing to a patient. So a lot of this was, I guess, subconsciously a forecast for where I think, my humble opinion, where hearing healthcare needs to be from today forward.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us to, how are you spreading that message? And does that come into the Excellence in Audiology Network or AUD experts? Can you describe those and how they came about?
Sure. So those are two. I appreciate the question. They're two completely different entities.
Okay.
So Excellence in Audiology. This is our national push. This is where clinics from across the country, so long as they meet certain standards and they subscribe to what's in our code of ethics, which is to hold the welfare of every patient paramount. If you subscribe to that, if you subscribe to our best practices in terms of diagnostic process, treatment process, you're now part of this like-minded group where patients from all over the country can find a provider that follows this concept of the medical treatment of hearing loss and tinnitus. If you're in the, let's sell hearing aids, let's cut our prices, let's do this, let's make it so the focus is on a widget and not the service, then it's not the program for you. This is about helping patients to be more educated, helping them to be ready to start treatment on day one because they now understand how important it is to treat their hearing loss. And so this is a nationwide network. In the last few months, in 2022, 2023 will be the big push, where what we're doing is, I always called it the Got Milk campaign, which we remember, and anybody our age-ish will remember, when all the milk companies came together. So the manufacturers, it's like they're all in the sandbox and they're just throwing sand at each other, fighting and trying to desperately grab onto patients. Let's come together and create our own campaign of, got good hearing, got hearing healthcare, whatever it is. We're not using those terms, but the point is to bring awareness about hearing healthcare. And that's what we're doing, be it the podcast, be it, there's all these newspaper articles that have been coming out lately. You'll see my face on American Airlines in 2022. I'm going to be on those TV screens right when you're about to take off. We're doing everything we can to spread the message about how important it is to treat hearing loss, and then how you can find a trusted clinician in your own backyard.
Cool. So if a clinic is listening to this and they want to be a part of the Excellence in Audiology Network, how do they go about doing that?
You can just go to excellenceinaudiology.org. You can look around there. You can email me. We'll put a link in the podcast. You can reach out to our team. We're always welcoming practices. There's more practices coming on every day. It's exciting for me because if you drew a box around the United States, we've got Maine, out to Alaska, down to Hawaii, and straight across to Florida. And many of the states in the middle are starting to fill in more and more. So it's a pretty exciting time to see more patients show up on day one. They understand the value of treating hearing loss. They understand that, yes, I have to pay something out of pocket, but I would be insane not to do it. And I think I've talked to you before about this a little bit. This all came about when my own daughter, was diagnosed with a disorder, and we were faced with, financial things. So that's kind of how this came about.
So when you were dealing with that with your own daughter, you found that you were going to have to pay out of pocket, but because she needed this medical treatment, you saw the importance of it. And so you didn't think twice about paying the money to get what she needed.
Basically, you just sort of summed it up. So my middle child, who's now 10, when she was about 4 or 5 years old, so she was getting close to entering kindergarten, we had discovered that she had a disorder in her legs. And this for us was a very defining moment because it was going to change our lives. We had no idea how long. We thought this little thing she did where she was always walking on her toes, we thought it was cute. I mean, we called her the little ballerina. She was in dance classes. It was this adorable little thing when this cute little blonde girl would tiptoe around the house, and she was just this bundle of joy. Turns out, as cute as it was, it's actually a medical condition. And so as we started to dive into this and learn more about it, it was life-changing. And I know every family deals with their own issues. And for some, they're much greater than what this issue was. And so I have empathy for that. But for us, this changed everything. And I'll still never forget, because this is right when I was starting my own practice. I'll never forget when we were leaving the office. They told us what we needed to do. My daughter had to have these braces. She had to wear them 24/7. They were going to be painful. She had to wear them when she slept, when she went to school. It was going to be a miserable life. And we had no idea how long it would last. It could last 3 years. It could last 10 years. She might spend her life in these braces. Had no idea. I remember walking, but it had to be done, right? I asked, is this necessary? What do we have to do? Are there options? And we went through everything, and it was like, okay, this is what needs to be done. Because if we don't do it, I remember the physician listing all the bad things that will come of my daughter's condition if we don't act now, if we don't catch it early and treat it early, which is one of the things that I profess to all of my patients, how important that is. And so once he went through that list and I understood the value of the treatment that he was recommending, I was on board. No questions asked, right? That was it. As we walked out of the office, went to the front office desk girl, who's very nice, and she told us everything that was going to be set up, what the future appointments look like. And then she looked at me with this kind of like sad puppy dog face of, just so you know, insurance will cover some of this, but you'll still be out of pocket about $6,000. And I just stood there and I said, okay. Like, there was no choice. The value that was being provided, whether it was $6, $6,000, or $60,000, the value was life changing. If it was $60,000, if it was $600,000, I wouldn't have robbed the church, but I might have robbed a convenience store. I would have begged, borrowed, and stealed from everybody I know. I would have moved mountains to make sure that my daughter got the medical treatment she needed because of how high the value proposition was. Yeah. And that night laying in bed, that's when I finally said, this is what needs to happen in hearing healthcare. How many times does a patient come in who's uneducated? It's not their fault because they don't know what hearing healthcare is about. All they know is there's a hearing aid. Their cousin got one, got bamboozled into spending $7,000 and hates it. It's a paperweight. It sits in their drawer. It's hanging out in their underwear drawer. Like, we needed to put forth a different value proposition such that patients would never question the value. And so I had to dig deep. And that's when I realized we don't sell hearing aids. We provide the medical treatment of hearing loss and tinnitus. Our value is such that we help people reduce their risk of dementia. We help people reduce their risk of falling and help them stay in their home longer. We help people reduce the ringing in their ears. We help people increase their quality of life and relationships at home. I could go on and on and on. And so when presented this way, the patients don't ask how much. All they want to know is, when do they start? Where do they need to sign? They will beg, borrow, and steal because the value proposition is so high. And that life-changing moment for me was when I went back and I changed everything in my practice, when I decided that there needs to be a community of like-minded people. And that's when we started Aud Experts. So you asked about that. Mm-hmm. Aud Experts is a coaching and consulting firm in hearing healthcare that helps other practices rise to the level we have, that allows them to really tap into their potential and help more patients, say, move away from the widget and more towards the medical model. And we've had a ton of success with this. I really believe the best players still need a great coach, right? Tom Brady, greatest of all time, he needs a coach. And so I really believe in the coaching mindset. And so that's when we decided to do that. I have my own coach who probably has his coach, and so on. So
So we can always keep learning. So Aud Experts is how you train other professionals. And so what all is included in that? You've got consulting, your boot camps. Do you want to talk about your boot camp a little bit?
Sure. So there's a lot. And I certainly don't want this to turn into an Aud Experts commercial by any means. But essentially what we're doing is our tagline comes from our heart, which is the champions of private practice. I believe, and I'm pretty sure you agree with me, that private practice is the way of the future. Private practice is where we truly get to spend a lot of time with our patients, right? We have an hour and a half to a 2-hour window for all of our new patient appointments. That is unheard of. You go to a major hospital or a university system, maybe you get 30 minutes. I still don't understand how you have a conversation, get to know somebody, go through the entire diagnostic process in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or even an hour. And so we have essentially taken the model that we've developed, and more practices are now joining on. Look, it's still your practice, and we want to help you grow. We want to help you access more private pay patients, more patients who understand the value and who are not willing to compromise, even if their insurance will get them something cheaper, that it's not worth it because you pay for what you get in life. And that's the same when it comes to hearing aids. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, perfect.
And so you asked, what else do we offer? Well, trainings. We have mindset trainings. We have trainings for providers, front office trainings. We have access to marketing materials. We have access to different vendors that can help you, whether it be marketing, whether it be developing your own book, your own materials. We're sort of a one-stop shop where we can help you, but our laser focus is to help change your mindset, help you to build an autonomous team so that you can grow the practice of your dreams, right? Too many practice owners, all they have is a job that they can't quit. Somebody said that to me a long time ago, and it really stuck with me that, if you're going to do a private practice, just make sure you don't have a job that you can't quit. And I didn't understand it at first, but now it makes sense because so many people come to us saying, if I get sick for a month, if something happens, if there's a worldwide pandemic, we might shut down. We might not be able to last because I'm not really running a business. I have this hobby. I have this thing that I can't get myself out of. And so we help people to find their financial freedom and independence also. And so, yes, we provide everything from, there's a marketing boot camp that's coming up in March, and that's with my marketing guru, Jared Brader, who's got his MBA in marketing. The boot camps that we do, usually twice a year, we've got a treatment boot camp, leadership boot camp. And this year, what I'm most excited about, and you're going to be on stage with me, is the neuroscience boot camp. You can find that at neurosciencebootcamp.com, where we are going to bring everything clinical neuroscience and turn it into exceptional patient care.
Well, I have to say I'm more excited to learn from your boot camp than actually to speak there, for sure.
Well, I do know that a lot of because I've already started to talk to people who are coming, and they're like, wait, Dr. Dusty's coming. I've read her. I had it around here somewhere. I've read the dog book. I love it. I love everything she does. I follow her on LinkedIn. I'm so excited to see her. So there's a lot of fanfare around you too.
You're nice. Thank you. Well, okay. I have 3 more questions. I know we're kind of running out on time here, but
all right.
One, you know that I have a philanthropic mind as well as a part of hearing the call in the Entheos Audiology Cooperative. And I know that you have a philanthropic mind and heart as well. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about your philanthropic endeavors.
I really believe that, yes, there's 42 million people who need to access hearing healthcare. So I've always believed as part of my mission that we need to make this affordable. That does not mean make it affordable by cutting corners. That does not mean make it affordable by compromising care. So what we've done over the last few years is we have created these membership programs in our practices, and many of the Excellence in Audiology members have this too, where patients are paying low monthly payments. You don't have to have all the money up front. It doesn't care what your credit is. It's a very simple program with simple payments that gives you access to the best hearing healthcare possible. So that is how we have made it affordable. This has allowed us to treat probably 90+% of patients who come into our practice, right? Because you've experienced it too, where the patient says, yeah, I think I want to do this, but I don't know if I can afford that, right? And then we have patients who are like crying that I need this, but I can't even afford the low monthly payment. Like, this will take food off of my table. And so many years ago, what started out as the Healthy Hearing Foundation of New England, which then joined with the Sound of Life program that's based in Utah, we are able to provide no cost. So when our patients say, look, I genuinely cannot afford this, our first core value is to treat every patient. Note, I did not say treat every patient who has money. I said treat every patient. And so my team has learned over time that truly means if they can't afford it, we will provide them that care for next to nothing. Honestly, most of the time, it's nothing. And so we're able to help patients in our own practice by providing free hearing healthcare. Sound of Life has had mission trips, not only across the globe, but to certain Navajo nations out in the Southwest, which is monumental because Navajo Nation is typically very skeptical, very untrusting of anybody to come into their community. They always feel like there's a catch, but we were able to break down barriers, and we were able to provide hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of hearing healthcare to the poor indigenous people. And it was just an amazing life-changing experience, right? So when providers get to help every patient, no matter what, it just creates a completely different mindset about hearing healthcare.
For sure. That's awesome. Kudos to you. Very cool. Okay.
And tell me, so have you been on Hearing the Call missions? I know it's a phenomenal program. I've always been enamored by Entheos. I am technically a member, although I've really put most of my focus on our nonprofit. I have not been able to attend meetings in the last few years, although I do end up on some email chains and stuff. But where have you been? What has been your role in that?
I've been part of the Entheos Cooperative for about 2 to 3 years now, and I've done one international trip to Guatemala. Life-changing, is the first time I've done something like that. And then, COVID happened, so we've got those on hold. But I did join with 6 other practices in Colorado, and so we have a kind of a local project under Hearing the Call, and so we've had 5 or 6 local clinics now, and we fit qualifying patients through that. So it's been very, very rewarding and put me in touch with other providers, to work closer with them than I would ever have before, and show me the local need. Even in our, very affluent country, there's so many people that need help. So it's a very different experience fitting people in the United States versus overseas. There's definitely a different mindset in a lot of the people here. Most of them are very, very grateful, and some of them are kind of entitled, they still live in America. So I bet you a lot of people who have these organizations in the US kind of find that too.
Sure.
But it's kind of like, it's understandable, I think, to just based on where we live and what's coming at us at all times versus the people who are in these third world countries that don't have access to all of that knowledge and resource. So, but it's been wonderful. I love it. And so anyone who has a project like this, I know you've been through what I can empathize with what you go through, both on a positive and the challenges that you go through with a nonprofit. It's not easy work. It's sad. It can be depressing. You wish you could help everybody even more. So it's an interesting and gratifying and challenging part of our career. Mm-hmm.
But I think the most important message, though, and what I would love to come across in this interview is we've been told, I think the ivory tower has told us that treating hearing loss is too expensive and Americans can't afford it. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that. Okay. I believe it really is a value proposition because, and I'm sure you've seen the numbers, if you go to a country where there's socialized medicine and hearing healthcare is included, including the cost of hearing aid technology, their adoption rates are not much better than ours. If you go to a place like Denmark, where Oticon, one of the major manufacturers, it's literally a household name. Almost everybody knows it, right? Because everybody knows somebody who works there. Even in a country where, say, hearing healthcare was invented, call it the hub of many things, at least empirically, when it comes to hearing healthcare. And even in a country like that, they still have very low adoption rates. So when I started to realize this, again, it was just reinforced in my head that this is a value proposition problem, that people can afford it. I mean, look at people, hundreds of thousands of people go to Disney every year. And if you look at the data, 85% of people who go to Disney overspend on the budget they set forth. More than 50% double their budget, right? Which tells you what? When you provide a tremendous value, and I don't want to get into a Disney debate, but if you provide a tremendous value, and a lot of people see value in it, they're willing to spend the money. Okay. And so all of this came together in my head of let's provide the best hearing healthcare, let's provide the value. And sure enough, now 9 out of 10 patients say, heck yes. When can I begin? Which is always, day one with our patients. Where do I sign the dotted line? What do I have to do to get this started? They don't ask what it costs. We have that conversation. And then you realize, yes, there truly is 5 to 10% of the population that genuinely cannot afford treatment. They understand the value, but it will take food off of their plate. And that's not right to do. And so that's why we created these organizations that can help those people, not the ones who are like, yeah, I don't want to pay for it because I don't see the value. That's my problem. I did something wrong in that appointment that you don't see the value.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay. Last two questions. What's your vision for 2022?
So in 2022, there's a few things I want to do. And I appreciate the question. I got to get all my thoughts together here because I wasn't ready for this one. Number one, I want to continue and actually increase the amount of education that we provide through Excellence in Audiology. We have an online university. It's the Excellence in Audiology Hearing Academy, or eiauniversity.com. You can go and learn more about it. We are going to be providing, there's going to be at least one CEU event per month. So I want to provide more education. And we just started doing this over the last couple of years, dribs and drabs. And now with all the demand, people want different, they want better courses. And I think we have a lot of fun on our courses. And so we already have 25 to 30 different CEU events lined up for this year, which is awesome. Okay. Yeah. So education is a big one for me. Training, if you or your team are looking for training, or you want to understand the processes that we use, we have training protocols in place. Some are on the EIA University. If you want it to be more interactive and live, we have live trainers also who go out there, who will go to practices. Mm-hmm. So education, training, accountability. And I'm sure you know this with having your own private practice. It's really important that we hold ourselves and we hold each other accountable. I believe in hearing healthcare that we are better together. And what that means is we have to hold each other accountable to the mission of helping more of the 42 million people understand why they have to start treating their hearing loss early. Catch it early, treat it early, right? So that would be number 3. And then finally, number 4, I keep things pretty close to the vest, but I've decided I'm going to be more open. I'm going to be putting myself out there a little bit more, perhaps being a little bit more vulnerable to some in hearing healthcare. And I'm going to increase engagement. I've been starting with the drkeithdarrow.com website. We now have a very active podcast, which you've been on. This episode will be on. There's a lot happening on social media, YouTube channels. So I guess it boils down to education, training, accountability, and engagement. I think that is the future of hearing healthcare. Awesome. Sounds great. I still really kind of want to know how the heck you have time to do all this. Or is it that you have an awesome team? You're very good at chunking your time. What is your secret there? So yes, I mean, hands down, have a phenomenal team, right? I do. I think what's happened is there's myself, Jared Brader, who I've mentioned, who is the marketing genius, barely even begins to describe it. Morgan, who is our strategist, who helps steer us in the right direction. And then Reese is our trainer. So there was a time several years ago where it was just Jared Brader and I, the boots on the ground. And I felt like, if I keep doing this, I know my wife loves me, but she might leave me if I keep traveling, and my kids might not recognize me anymore. And so, yes, I've had to, hone in on what I'm good at. We've had to bring new people into the team so that we can be more effective and be more efficient with our time. And so I absolutely cannot do this alone. Yes, I have figured out a way to be a little bit better with managing my time, chunking down time, making sure I'm there. I'm putting the kids on the bus. I'm most days getting them off the bus. I'm able to have dinner with them. Yes, I do travel. Anybody who knows me knows that I disappear for about 6 weeks from July to mid-August. We're very fortunate in my family where my father lived in Virginia, right on the beach. We've got a nice little condo. We kind of disappear there, no electronics, and just sit on the beach almost every day for 12 hours a day. So work hard, play hard, I guess.
That sounds dreamy. That I was going to ask you, what's your favorite thing to do outside of work? Would that be it?
Well, it depends on the season.
Okay.
So that like right now, we're, in winter, it's skiing. We all ski. We're very fortunate to live about 15 minutes from a mountain. In the spring, we definitely love getting outdoors. We do love to travel. Pre-COVID, we were traveling all the time. We're starting to kick back up. In the summer, it's sitting on the beach almost every day. And the fall, probably back to hiking. So definitely like to get out, be with the kids, be with Laura, and really make the most, because, right, you only get one shot at this. And having a grandfather and a father who both died at the age of 65. And I never met my grandfather, but to see my father go at 65, never met my son. Charlie Noble is his middle name, Noble. That was my dad's name. It's my middle name. So my dad never got to meet my son. He met my middle child when she was 2 weeks. No, she was about 4 weeks old. They got to spend a few days together, and then he died suddenly a couple days later, just of a heart attack in his sleep at 65. And so, I think it's one of those things, maybe it's cliche to say, but as I've gotten older and got a lot more gray in my beard, I've certainly started to refocus and make sure that I make the most of this life. And yes, while I wake up every day excited to get out of bed and figure out what can I do today to help more of the 42 million people, all of that comes after making sure that I'm there for my family.
Yeah, for sure. That's probably the best advice you gave through the whole hour. I'm just kidding. You have so many amazing nuggets in there.
Thank you.
Both for us as providers, but also I really appreciate the personal side of it too, because I feel so strongly about that as well. So thank you. This has been so enlightening. You are a shining light in our field and greater and beyond. And I just am so grateful for everything that you're doing for our profession, for our patients, and excited to keep following everything that you do and to finally read that book that's been sitting on my shelf. I'm going to read it now.
Thank you very much. Look, when you reached out and said, hey, can I be a guest host? Because I want to learn more about you. And so maybe this is a great opportunity. I am forever grateful that you did this. This will now, I guess, live in infamy. It'll be online in all sorts of places, on the podcast, on the YouTube channel. I am grateful that we finally have crossed paths. I've seen the dog book, the 5 keys to communication success. I've seen it for years. I've looked at it. I've given it to patients. And so to be able to finally get to work with you, and now to know that I get to share the stage with you at the neurosciencebootcamp.com that's happening in May. It's an honor of mine, something that I will always cherish, and I can't wait for that event.
Me too. Yay. All right. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you.
You too.